Another year is upon us, 2023. Can you believe it, 2023 already? And wow, last few years have been rough, don't you think? Well, every year, here in the Big Web Show, we do see what the stars have in store for 2023. And well, I'm not an expert, but guess who is? Cosmic Colleen. She's back. Follow her on the podcast, and you see her here each every year. So Colleen, welcome back to the big show here, and tell everybody what we can expect from the stars in 2023.
Hey, Joe. Well, thank you. It's so good to be back. As I said earlier to you, this is my fourth time on your show or third time on your show?
I think it's 3 or 4 now. You've also been on some B-roll shots too, so it's actually more than live interviews.
And it's been really great to come on because when I first started the show, I just kind of finished my first year of professional astrology. And each year I know I grow and I grow and I come onto your show more confident. So I'm excited to bring 2023's forecast. And thank you for having me again and allowing me to share with your listeners what we can expect of 2023.
So what can we expect in 2023? That's what inquiring minds want to know.
Okay, well, let's start out with the beginning, right? It's kind of the transits that the beginning of January 2023 trickled in from the end of 2022. So as you know, we had Mars retrograde, your favorite or least favorite planet, I could say, right?
No, Mars is a bully. We know
Mars is the war. It's the god of war. It loves to go to war. It likes to fight. It likes to sever. It likes to end things. And it likes to activate things. But it's also where we get our drive, our power, our assertiveness. So there is some good to it. But generally, it comes in to shake things up and rebalance itself. So we started that. It entered Gemini. And the last time it was in Gemini was in 2008. And it wasn't even this long. And it retrograded. I'm sorry, not the last time it retrograded. It goes into Gemini a lot, but the last time it retrograded. And it's been in there for 8 months. So your first house, as we were talking. Mm-hmm. And we're ending that on January 12th. And then we had Mercury retrograde. We ended the year with that. And we're still in Mercury retrograde. And that ends on January 18th. And so Mercury, which rules both Gemini and Virgo, is dealing with Mars right now in its sign retrograding. So one of the good things compared to Mars retrograde of 2020, which I talked about on your show, one of the good things that happens when it's in Gemini, it's an immutable sign. So right away, any of the fights, the arguments, the disagreements, the issues that maybe happened aren't going to feel so permanent as they will in other more cardinal or fixed signs. When it's an immutable sign of Gemini, things tend to shift, change, or nothing will be so permanent and your reactions won't feel so permanent. However, there is this sort of tear down of something that's not working mentally for you anymore. And you're really having to look at yourself and saying, how am I holding myself back? How am I kind of being stuck in chaos? How am I being a disaster to myself? So that's why it can be a little bit painful because we see the shadows of ourselves as well as others.
You're talking about chaos in the background here. I got people stuck at a red light here, blowing horns and revving up engines and stuff. Sounds like somebody's doing something really chaotic here at the traffic light below my apartment. But,
well, that also feels like Mercury retrograde, right? So that's talking about that rules traffic, technology, communication, and the way we go about life. So it's retrograding in the sign of Capricorn. And when it retrogrades, we will naturally, when it looks at traffic, right, it will be, especially in Capricorn, you'll see roads being totally blocked off that normally aren't. You're going to see total long stops. You're going to see wrecks. You're going to see things that break for good. And also with Mercury retrograding in Capricorn, we're also kind of really asked to go past our limits. But when that happens, it's like kind of annoyance. Like we reached our annoyed level, and that actually teaches us more patience. Believe it or not, it's uncomfortable, but the Mercury retrograde is annoying. It's outside things that are happening around us that we really don't have control over. And one of the good things about Mercury is it teaches us how to be mutable, like the sign itself, and how to go with the flow and plan B and C when A doesn't work. So if you take that mindset into Mercury retrograde, it will allow you to flow freely into it because it's usually inconveniences and it's things that will work out. Mars retrograde, things work out too, but it's way more internal. We're feeling it more personally.
Well, the Mercury retrograde you brought up on your podcast recently, that it can even affect technology. So, for example, your cell phone suddenly crashes, or somehow my magic machine here crashes and screws up this interview. Hopefully not. But it can affect physical things too, like your phone, right?
Yeah, so it rules technology, and that's actually a really big way that you will see Mercury retrograde play out. So if you're kind of new to astrology, this is a great transit to focus on when you hear people start talking about Mercury retrograde. Pay attention to your technology. One of the warnings I brought up, though, was it being in the sign of Capricorn, which rules death. This is definitely one where if technology fails, some things may have a more permanent break with them. So, watch your drinks around your computers, which I have one sitting there right now, back up your files, do all those good things you need to do to make sure your technology is backed up. But in some of the ways, just in the last week that I talked about on my podcast, that we've seen Mercury retrograde. So the other day I was walking into the salon and two people were at the kiosk. I go under a train, and two people were filling up their train card, and the machine wasn't working. They couldn't get their card to load money onto the train card. And they were like, what the heck? And then I walked into the salon, and my first client was like, I can't get the Park Mobile app to work. And then our salon radio was down. I'm trying to book my son's birthday party last week, and I tried to call the place, and their phones were starting to break up. Then I tried to do it online, and they were there. And then the one day they weren't there. They have like a bunch of places around the United States. They weren't there anymore. So then I had to go in, and they said that their whole phone system shut down, their computer system shut down. And it's been like that for 7 days now. And hopefully it was going to be fixed.
So how long do we have to worry about the technology issues, the issues of people being angry? Like, when are the stars going to align and just fix the technology and give everybody a happy pill? Like, when do we get through this? When can we look for something positive?
Well, there's lots of positive coming, but it's important to remember that life flows evenly through the good and the bad times, right? And astrology shows us that cycle. So things get good, and then they shift hard again, and then they get good again, and then they shift hard again. And so it's not just like a permanent, it's just like seasons of goodness and then hardships. And again, just a reminder, this is sort of the general for the collective energy reading. If you want to know a little bit more detailed, you got to know your birth chart, because that will specifically allow you to see how this is going to play out. Is it going to play out big, or is it going to play out small, and what kind of pain is coming? But I think that it's going to be okay. So the end of January is going to be really good. Venus has, went to Capricorn to Aquarius, and then it moves into not her exile, where she's lifted up. Yeah, she's exalted here, her exile. Sorry. So she is happy in Pisces. So the end of the month, she moves into Pisces. I actually think that February is going to be a really easy month. I think we're going to be happy. We're going to be free flowing. However, I'm going to say the hardest month of 2023, in my opinion, is coming in March. I think March through June is going to be particularly difficult. Not horrible. There's going to be good things that happen. Remember, there's going to be good things that happen. But I think the hardest transits of the year are happening in that time. And then I believe it's going to be pretty smooth sailing the rest of the year. Honestly, the second half, there's, some harder transits, but nothing is as big as March. March is going to be the big year of this year.
Okay, so we've established that March through June is basically going to be the tough part of the year. It's going to be great after that. But here's the question. Last year, you predicted the financial crisis that was about to happen. Boy, you nailed that one, and that definitely did happen. So is that going to get any better?
Yes, I think it is going to get better. However, I think it's going to be, and I'll explain that as being a big transit. I think it's definitely going to get better, but I think it's going to be more about balancing itself out. I think that there's going to be a large upbringing of people who say, hey, this isn't fair and we need good changes. And I think that's actually going to be a big change that leads into the next 20 years, 10 years. And that is because one of the big transits of March, and I really want to talk about March, is going to be Pluto moving into Aquarius. I know a lot of people have probably heard about that or not, but Pluto's moving into Aquarius, where it stays for about 20 years. So from 2023 until the end of 2024, it will go back and forth because it retrogrades between Capricorn and Aquarius. So it's finishing out 15 years in Capricorn, and then it moves into Aquarius in March. And so with Pluto, we really look at the collective. We look at the world, not as much personally. I mean, it does trigger the chart, but really we're going to see collectively. So I was just listening to, I love to listen to the astrology podcast, and some of the astrologers were talking about this transit, Pluto and Aquarius, because it's pretty big for the collective. And one of the words that they came up for it was that I loved for this, next 20 years is technology dystopia. So I think we're going to have a lot of, we've seen technology grow so fast, especially since the start of COVID. And there is a lot of good to that, but we haven't seen the downside to all of this and the changes, even the changes with genetics and weird shit like that. So I think it won't be so far this year, maybe a few little niches towards it. However, that's going to be a big theme. And then Pluto being an Aquarius, the air sign, actually really rules breaking through limitations and breaking through social norms and also trying to even out and bring justice and social justice. So that's why I say in the financial crisis, I think starting this year and through the next 20 years, we're going to see the uprising of kind of the underdog a little bit. And I think we're going to see a more balance between the imbalance of the rich and the poor and, everything else that comes with that.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. Very interesting. And the big question is, now you said Pluto is going to be involved and it takes 10 to 15 years, sometimes 20. Is that because Pluto's so far out in the solar system? Is that anything to do with it? And that's why, like when Mars is here, it retrogrades faster because it's the next planet over, basically.
Correct. So it moves very, very, very slow. And actually, I was reading something about Pluto, which I didn't quite realize. The astronomy part, I'm learning more, not just the astrology part, but one of the reasons why is as it goes, it stays longer in each sign. So we actually didn't discover Pluto until 1930 when it was in the sign of Cancer. So actually, nobody alive today has experienced Pluto in Aquarius. And the last time it was in Aquarius was 1777 until 1798. So it moves very slow and it's moving up and up. So it was in Sagittarius for 13 years and then Capricorn for 15, 20 years. And then I believe when it's in, I think Aries and Taurus or Pisces and Taurus, it will be in for 30 years.
Wow, that's a long time ago, 1770. Hey, that's back when they thought the planet was still flat, and it's a flat Earth theory going on. So a couple times in the past few years on this web show, you said that basically we're going through a great reset. Are we still going through that? Because if you're talking about how long it takes Pluto to affect everything, it sounds like the answer might be yes.
I mean, yeah, it really does. And if you look, we've kind of been talking about the Great Reset since I came on the show in 2020. And each year we can see the new layer, I think, of the reset, right? We have the destruction. And then we kind of have the loose confusion limbo after the destruction. And then this year of 2022 has been kind of the start of, I think we've seen the downfall, honestly. I think we've seen, the fallback from COVID. And we've seen the negative sort of play out. And I think each layer, this year we're going to start to come together a little bit more. It's not going to be perfect, but I think entering this year now, we're going to start putting some of the pieces together and building this new world together. And I think Pluto and Aquarius is going to be really big about that. I also think, one of the things, the transits I talked about for the last 2 years was Saturn squaring Uranus. They are two slow-moving planets. One's in Taurus and Saturn's been Aquarius. And that's another big transit this year, Saturn moving into Pisces, we'll talk about. But they were with Uranus, we see the change, the shift. It's a really chaotic and really sudden change and very I'm going to break every rule. I'm going to be totally different and weird and out there, up against Saturn, which is very traditional and limits and this is how the world is. This is what we're doing. And we've watched that play out collectively, with women's rights and LGBT rights and all kinds of things. We're no, here's the new world and here's the old world. And we've been this dynamic as a collective for a couple years now. So now I feel as though Saturn's moving into Pisces, and I want to talk, that also happens in March. Pluto moving to Aquarius, I feel like the side of the change, the shift, the Uranus side, that people are hey, life is different and we like it over here. And it's time to break past all these limitations and rules we've been dealing with for 60 years. I feel as though that side's going to win. I'm sort of the new idea world, right? That's me. That's definitely how I vibe. And so I think that's going to start winning now. I think we're going to be kind of letting go of those old past things we thought about the world being in like 1950, and now we're going to be really ahead. I think that's going to happen.
So what I'm gathering out of this on a simple line, it's basically 2023 is better than 2022. You'll have a couple of rough spots, and then 2024, even maybe 25, we're going to keep moving up. Like it's going to get better and better. We're kind of coming out of this hole that we're kind of in a little bit.
Yeah, we are. We are. And then it'll shift again, maybe 20 years, maybe when Pluto enters Pisces, it'll shift again. But yeah, we're on the up for definitely the next 10 years. But again, there's going to be shifts and change. And I think the one fear of the up and up is going to be going on too fast. We have a lot of new planets beginning in new signs and fast signs, air signs, fire signs. And so I feel as though we're really going to be on the up and up. But some issues may stem from growing too fast, being too fast, jumping on these technology crazes too fast. You get what I'm saying?
But at least we know we got a better year to look forward to. A good February, a little rough spot, and then once we get through summer, at least we finally have something positive to look forward to. Anything else you can say that we should look for coming up in 2023?
Yeah, I want to talk about another big transit, and that is going to be Saturn moving into Pisces. So Saturn stays in a sign for about 2.5 years. So we had Saturn in Aquarius from December of 2020 until this coming March, in March of 2023, when it moves into Pisces. So it's moving into the mutable water sign. So I think there is going to, and adding to the collective, there's going to be a little bit of freedom there. We're going to feel a little bit easier to feel free to express ourselves. We're going to kind of like think of hippie, like free, peace, happiness, and love combined with dazed and confused, if that makes sense. That's very Pisces vibe. So Saturn, which is, again, the planet of limitations and structure and karma and government, kind of like the old governing God, grandfather who also brings rewards, but is watching you. You're always under their thumb, has been in Aquarius, which even though it's an air sign and kind of erratic, it's still a little bit fixed. It's a fixed sign. So I feel like we're going to feel a much freer energy. We're going to be breaking boundaries on a collective. Again, adding to like the Pluto in Aquarius, we're shifting timelines right now. We're kind of going to be taking in the 1960s love a little bit and hippiness. And I think that as a collective, we're not going to feel so like strong when it comes to like, no, this is what I want. No, this is what I want. I think we're going to be a little more passive and coming together a little bit more.
Love and hippiness coming back. I hope bell bottoms and those giant collared shirts don't come back. But one final question I had, speaking about energy and spirit, when our loved ones like pass on or somebody goes the other side, is that affected by the stars or signs at all? Is that energy kind of come into play with everything that's going on? Like how does that all work, if you could put that on a layman's term for someone?
So, luckily, I haven't studied personally someone's chart who, like, I saw it coming, like a death is coming. I just know how to relate my own chart of previous deaths and some of my clients who have had it previous. But yes, so oftentimes in your own chart or in someone else's chart, you can see certain transits that end up bringing death, whether death to the birth chart owner or death to someone else that represents like in the birth chart, like a mother, father, sister, brother, something like that. And oftentimes you'll find there'll be transits with Saturn, Pluto, Mars can definitely bring some, but Saturn brings death. Mars brings the destruction and chaos, which can lead to death, or the shit that happens before you die, especially if you're being wild and whatever. And then Pluto, it rules the underworld and power, and it can rule death to a degree, not so much as Saturn, but again, the underworld. So yeah, in personal charts, there definitely can be signs, or if you get to know your chart, this is what I suggest to people if they want to know themselves. Look up, if you know astrology, you're getting to know astrology, start looking up your chart and go back in time, right? So for instance, when my father passed away 13 years ago, Saturn was actually, it was on my sun, like my natal sun, it was in transit with that. It was transiting my natal sun. And I also had Jupiter in my eighth house of Aries, of other people's money. And so he had passed away when my natal sun, and the sun represents the father in astrology. And then when I Jupiter in Aries, which represents abundance, I ended up getting money from his passing. And so that's just like a simple one to throw out there. But I've dated back actually to when my grandparents passed away and other things that have happened. And believe it or not, the last time that the last time that Jupiter had one in there, my grandmother passed away 12 years prior, and I had gotten some things from my grandmother. So again, when we watch and when we know and understand, we can really see how, unfortunately, death and those play out.
Very interesting. Once again, Colleen, thank you for bringing the stars back in layman's terms. That helps out everybody, I think. And at least we know we're going to make it through 2023. Doesn't sound like the planet's going to explode or anything, so that's a good sign.
The planet's not exploding. We're really, in 2023, we're really going to see the shift and the change begin in a positive way as far as morally, humanity. I think we're going to be all coming together again in community and connection. We're going to be searching it more than ever. I think, we're going to see a lot of people separate from the screen. I mean, the screen's always going to be there, but separating from finding connection through the screen and searching for it out in the world and with people again.
Interesting, Colleen. All right, and then real quick, if anybody wants to find where your podcast is or how they want to reach out to you for a client session, how do they go about doing that?
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. So my website's a little under construction right now. So you can email me at thehairhealer1111@yahoo.com for inquiries about having a birth chart reading with me, which I highly suggest. If you want to listen to my podcast, check out the Weekly Awakening podcast. It airs every Monday. And each week I drop a 20-minute episode about the astrology of the week and what you can expect to awaken in your own life, and usually how it will play out in collective, but again, how it will play out in your own life and how you can bring awareness to yourself. I also bring on interviews of people to talk about their spiritual awakenings and astrology, tarot reading, and all that other good stuff.
And if you don't want to watch a whole episode, you can catch clips all over your social media too at Cosmic Colleen on Instagram, Twitter. You post little clips up there, so that kind of helps out too if you want to get the abridged version.
Yes, yep, Cosmic Colleen, one C in the middle.
One C in the middle, and on Twitter it's got an underscore at the end too. I don't know why, but you got an underscore. An underscore.
There was another Cosmic Colleen was taken on there. For some reason, Cosmic Colleen with nothing else at the end was not taken on all other social media but Twitter.
All right, well, we'll have to get a lawyer on that one. All right. Well, thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Colleen, for showing up here on the Big Web Show. And now we know what to look forward to in 2023. And if you want to have a guaranteed good time, I predict you'll click that like, subscribe button, or leave a message here for me or Colleen, and join all the fun right here on the Jersey Joe 50 YouTube channel. And for Jersey Joe, Colleen, thanks for watching. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time, I hope.